right. Okay, well, welcome to Career Lab Wednesday. I am your host, George Miller. I'm here almost every Wednesday from noon until, noon till 12:30 or 1, depending on what kind of questions we get. So there's a few ways to engage here. I love it when you jump in like Jerry has and are on and available. If you have questions or comments, you can jump in at any time. If you are joining in through YouTube or LinkedIn Live and are just watching the stream, type your questions into the comment section. And for anybody who wants to work directly with me, I invite you to jump in here directly on Zoom. However, this is being live streamed. I don't think that people go around and employers go and look for stuff on this. I don't think that's how it works. But if you have any concerns, just know that this is being live streamed. So I'm going to share a little bit about today, leadership and emotional intelligence. But I want everybody to know that you can ask any question. Any question is fair game, anything career related. I love taking questions about interviews, especially interviews, resumes, managing, and even career purpose. Like, what am I doing? Why? How do I get more satisfaction in my career? Any question career related is fair game. I will probably tie it back to emotional intelligence because that's my expertise. But that's also what is most effective for development in your career. Of course, technical skills are important. You've got to know how to handle the things in your line of work. But at a certain point, it becomes about teamwork. It becomes about how am I interacting with my clients, with my team, with my boss, whatever. And that all then enters the territory of emotional intelligence and developing communication skills. And I'm laughing about this because I've been coaching for over 13 years now, and I'm always continuing to be assessed, to use AI tools now to assess me as a coach, getting feedback from other coaches. And I'm like, man, what have I been doing for the past 13 years? It's like I get so frustrated with all the mistakes and all the limitations that I have. And that's just part of the game. So when we're in the world of emotional intelligence and leadership development, it's a never-ending journey. There's always another mountain to climb. And that can be a really helpful space to come from. Welcome, Lauren. So for everybody who's just joining in, again, I love it when you jump in directly on Zoom. You're welcome to come off mute at any time and ask a question or type into the comment section if that's how you're rolling. If you're watching on YouTube live or LinkedIn live stream, type your questions into the comment section. And don't worry about throwing me off. I am currently facilitating 6 different emotional intelligence groups. And what part of lots of people's jobs in that is to develop new behaviors. One person in one group right now has the assignment to interrupt, developing that skill of speaking up in a meeting because they would too often sit back and not say anything. So just getting that muscle practicing. So I'm welcoming anyone who is on to ask a question at any point in time. So what I'm teeing up today is how managing is really an emotional intelligence job. How as I continue to develop myself as a leader, it's less about having the exact roles set out. Now, that's important to understand how authority plays out, but I need to be more aware of my feelings and the feelings of my team and the feelings of my boss. The more that I am developing in my career, it has way more to do with emotional intelligence than it does with positioning. So influence, the tag that we used on the LinkedIn post, which I'm disagreeing with, is about not being an authority. It's not really about that. It's about understanding what my authority is. So most people, when we move into a new leadership position, I'm now going into a place where there are skills that I have not developed yet. And I really actually should feel afraid. My fear is signaling to me, hey, there's things that you need to learn. And if I'm unwilling to be with that anxiety, then I start making all kinds of mistakes where I'm trying to act confident. And what will end up happening is that I am communicating from a place of superiority out of a more unconscious sense of inferiority. So I'm basically trying to overcompensate. And this is such a typical thing that happens with leadership development. And so managing has way more to do with my feelings and being more aware of my feelings and the feelings of those around me. So now, for managing up, what we're digging into is understanding the concerns of your boss or your supervisor and being able to welcome Rick. Good to have you. And being able to understand what their fears are and how to use the anxieties that you have about your position and understanding things in rapport with them. And so many breakdowns can happen in this place. So I'm throwing out this topic right now. We're 8 minutes in, and I want to remind everybody who's just joining in, there's a few ways you can engage. You can type your questions into the comment section or jump in here on Zoom and feel free to ask any questions at any point that are career related. Of course, I love it if they're on this topic of managing up. If not, totally fine. I will probably find a way to tie it back to the topic. So in leadership development, it's not just about strategy. It's about relationship. It's about developing my relationship with the people around me. So a story that I can share with this, one of my clients, she's a go-getter. She's always advancing in her career. And she goes to her boss and says, here's my understanding of what's most important to you. She, had 3 things that she brought to his attention. And he says, 2 of those you're on, but there's this whole other one that actually I haven't shared anything about yet with you. And so I understand why you don't know about it. This was before AI was as developed as AI is. He said, AI is really going to impact us. And I don't know what to do about it. And nobody on our team wants to look at it, but it's going to have an impact. And, I want you to head that up. So he says that to her and she says, I was not planning on this. I did not want this responsibility coming in here. And so she was honest about that. She said, here are my concerns. I have no background in this. So right there, she's managing up effectively. She's telling him what her fears are about herself as a leader. And he says, I got it. I understand you don't have a lot of the technical know-how here, and that doesn't matter. I just want you on developing relationships with people who do. Right now, we are about ready to fly into the dark on this, and we need some lines of communication. So your job is to develop relationships and yes, help us understand what we can do. But there's really kind of no way you can fail in this. And I get that it's completely outside your comfort zone. So she goes ahead with it. She starts developing some relationships and is absolutely outside of her comfort zone on this. Is not what she signed up for. But she is able to bring this information back and now develop a new level of trust in herself and with her boss. This eventually leads to an introduction to somebody in her dream company. So I'll cut to the chase on this one. She ends up getting, she moving to another company out of this. But she did it in a way that even as she transitioned, she talked to her boss the whole time and said, hey, this other company is talking to me. It's like, oh no, what can we do to keep you here? They worked at it for 6 months. And she improved the organization that she was leaving while transitioning to the next one. And she did this all in relationship, developing her sense of herself, her awareness of her feelings, of feeling afraid, feeling hurt in interacting with others, and using the fear and the hurt as signals to open up communication instead of what so much of us are trained to do is to, when I feel afraid, to go and hide. I feel my feelings are hurt. Well, I'm going to go sulk. That's mine. And so by becoming increasingly aware of her feelings, she and willing to be with those uncomfortable feelings, she would use them as openings to conversations. And that is how she has been a fantastic leader and really successful at managing up, owning her insecurities, her inferiorities, and catching where she would want to go to superiority and say things like, oh, my boss just doesn't understand. Not, if she said that, she'd be right, but it's true but useless. Does not help build the relationship. So for her to understand where she wants to go to superiority and say, God, my boss is such an idiot. And instead be able to say, okay, I get that there's some things that I'm actually the authority on. I do have a better understanding than my boss, but I don't need to lean into that kind of unconsciously and put them down. Now, so many of these things we are doing unconsciously. And so it's not like she would verbally put her boss down, but little signals. We all communicate in ways that we are unaware of what's really going on. So the game that I'm talking about is first becoming more aware of feelings and developing the discipline and choicing to stay with the uncomfortable feelings so that I'm more aware of what's going on in my unconscious space and then able to take meaningful risks in relationship with the people around me. All right, well, I've talked now for 15 minutes, so that's a broad scope of emotional intelligence and developing in leadership and a story about managing up. And I would love to hear any questions that anybody has. And again, you don't have to try to ask a question that has to do with this. If you're in here and you're like, I've got I'm interviewing right now and I'm running into some challenges in interviews, or what's some helpful tips about how to interview more successfully, or I've been in my career for a while and I'm bored, or I'm afraid about what's happening with AI and what can I do? Any question career related is fair game. There's a couple ways that you can share. You can either come off mute and ask, or you can type your questions into the chat or into the comment section, and I will do my best to engage with you that way. So as I kind of let some space for questions to come in, there's some other ways you can engage with me. So I love meeting one-to-one. You are welcome to set up a one-to-one conversation with me. We can talk for 15, 20 minutes. Sometimes in a quick conversation, you're able to get more clarity about where you're at in your career. And sometimes it's just affirming to say, you know, I'm moving. I want to move in this direction. I want to check that out and make sure that's okay. And sometimes just a quick conversation around that can go a long way. So I'm happy to do that. And sometimes there's a bigger project on the table, and I'm happy to talk about what a coaching relationship might look like. So that's one way that you can engage with me. Another one is, I know there's so many personality assessments and things out there, but I do have a quick one that clients and myself, I've been using this for the past 13 plus years. It's the CARE profile. It's similar to DISC in some ways, but it's more simple. And the main function of the one that I share, it's on that link, Connect and Thrive. The main purpose of it is to get good at speaking other personality styles. So of course you got to understand your own first. Say, okay, I'm an energizer type. Once you understand more of what your style is, the video that I have attached with the assessment is to help you understand other people's styles. So how to pick up quickly on if you're talking to somebody who cares a lot more about data and isn't going to be as expressive with their face and recognizing somebody who just wants results, and recognizing somebody whose decision-making process comes from thinking about the whole, thinking about their family, thinking about the community. And so we all have a different language in how we make decisions. And so, you know, salespeople love this, but it's really helpful for managing too, to understand who you're talking to. Like one of my mentors, and he's a very different personality style than me, but he knows that he knows my personality style. So if I share a success with him, never in his life would he have before done something like, "Go, George!" Like, that's just not his style. But because he understands he's working with me, he'll actually do that kind of thing. He'll be like, "Yay, George!" And I know that he's outside of his comfort zone, but it means a whole lot to me that he's willing to stretch himself so that his message to me is being heard better. So that's the real power of this kind of thing, is to be heard by other people. It is like learning another language. So take a look at that if you're into personality assessments. It's another fun one to use, and you're welcome to share it with your team. Many of my clients have done that, where they use it and then they'll have their spouse or kids take it, and they can kind of get a sense of how to play with it. So those are a few more ways to engage with me. But I'd love to open it up again and see if anybody has any questions, anything on your heart that you would like to move forward in your career. Again, feel free to type into the chat or come off mute and ask. And if you are viewing on LinkedIn Live or on YouTube, go ahead and type into the comment section, and I am happy to take that question. I'm on a new device here, so I gotta pull up my notes a little differently now, as I got a split screen that in some ways I love, but in other ways it's changed my workflow. Okay. So I think I'm going to share some more, and again, feel free to interrupt me at any time, but I'll set some broader context about leadership and development. One of the things that I think is important to look at is we've had so much emphasis on equality and equal, everybody having equal opportunity. And that makes a whole lot of sense. Like, I think that's wonderful. And it can get challenging as as people are developing in an organization where some people are just more gifted at things. Like, I am not great with, structure is not my strong suit. So because I know that, I put myself in structures that I work well with, and I hire people who are more structured than I am, who have more organizational capacity than I do. And so there's all kinds of ways that I am not equal. And yet I can come from a place of mutuality. And that can be my North Star in leadership challenges. So like the story I was sharing with one of my clients was that, there were ways that she was more of an authority on how the gaming industry works. And yet in the position of how the structure was in the organization, she's not the boss. So she's not the one who's ultimately making decisions that affect the overall functioning of the organization. She made it to some degree. So they can be mutual, but they're not equal. And to be able to influence managing up is to be able to really be curious about what it's like for somebody in the leadership position that's above you. And to really let yourself feel the anxieties that they're experiencing, because that will give you an opening in how to communicate more effectively with them. And that's where I'll share this story. So one of my clients during the interview process, when he applied this approach to influencing, so he's talking to the owner of the company, and he's asking all kinds of questions that were uncomfortable questions to ask about the job description. And the owner would often pause and say, you know what, we haven't really looked at that yet. So then my client would bring up another question for them yet. And, okay, well, you haven't looked at that yet. So now in this role that I'm applying for, how would I fit into this anyway? I'm just kind of giving the flesh of their interaction. By the end of the interview, the owner said, I am so sorry. I'd love to hire you, but you've asked such good questions. I've now realized that I don't really understand what I'm hiring for. And so I can't hire you. I need to go back to the drawing board. You've actually really helped me think about how to look at this. But here's what I can do for you is I'm going to introduce you to some other people that I think you might be a good fit with. And so what he was able to do in that interview was to really consider the concerns that the owner had and to pay attention to his fears of like, oh no, is this owner and I, are we going to be, am I setting myself up for a hellish job here? Like, is this actually something I even want to do? given that the job description is this, and as I'm finding out more about it, it looks like there's a lot more responsibilities here than was really on the table. So that's another way to look at it. And it requires being curious and being in touch with fear. So actually, I got a little more in the weeds on that one than I guess I intended to get in the weeds in that way. So authority, I think it's helpful to look at it as something that's developmental. It's not a fixed thing. The thinker that I will refer to on this is Alfred Adler, who says that all human beings, we develop our personality, we develop our gifts in a large part based on our insecurities. As children, we're tiny, and there's all kinds of things we can't do. And so we strive for superiority. We strive for mastery on things, and that's how we learn and grow. And along the way, we have to make all kinds of compensations. We have to, if I'm in a family system, for me, I grew up in a pacifist Mennonite family. And so just any show of anger and of aggression and competitiveness was frowned on. So I had to come up with ways to get things done, but acting like I wasn't. And it's a common thing for a lot of us, is to learn how to kind of hide our intentions. And so I compensated for that. And I got very good at being aware of the room around me, but I did not develop ways to speak clearly. And I was always hedging what I would say, so that I wouldn't get too much attention on me. Youngest child. So, again, I'm up against that challenge of everybody having more understanding than me. Well, that becomes a real problem in the workspace. If I'm in a meeting and I'm now speaking in ways that are unclear, and I'm jumping through all these hoops that no longer exist in that space in the organization I'm in, that my family system is no longer there. I've brought my unconscious family system with me there. So then I have to begin taking little risks to adapt to always be uncomfortable. It's just how it is. Jack Mesereau says, childhood is formation, adulthood is transformation. And in transformation, things break down. Just like if I'm building muscle at the gym, I've got to do exercises that literally rip the muscle and then have it form in new ways. So this is the same thing going on in leadership development. And so there's no set point in authority. It's always shifting. And for most of us, claiming our personal authority is the first step. Most of us are not as good at that as we could be. And I think of authority as author of my life, author of the interactions happening to me. Great example just popped up from yesterday. So somebody who is an energizer cooperator type, really cares about the group and loves what's cool and celebrating possibilities and envisioning into what's possible with people. And they are quite successfully, travel around the country, meeting with different district managers, and they're working on giving more effective feedback to the district managers. And so what has come up for them is they realized that they were not claiming their authority, their personal authority with the individuals they're talking to. So imagine you are in, somewhere in small town Kansas, small town Oklahoma, and you're managing that area. And then somebody from Chicago comes down and is talking to you and wants you to improve how you're performing. So there's issues. And imagine they say to you, we need you to do this. We need you to, we have your back, but and I was like, that's going to be terrifying to them. That's going to, already their defenses are going to come up with the use of we language. Because it's like you and this entire company and the whole weight of it is now focused on them. And so even if what you're telling them is accurate and they cognitively get what you're saying and say, oh yeah, I know how to do that. Why don't, I need to just make sure I keep that discipline going. Even if they get that, their defenses are already up and their system, it does not want to hear that information. And what was going on for my client is that basically they didn't want to own their own authority in it and just say, I want you to win at this. I have your back. I'm coming down here to meet with you one-on-one to ensure that you're going to be successful. Notice the difference there. If you can feel that in your body as I say it out, for them, it's way more vulnerable to say that. They have to be more present with their fear. They have to acknowledge the fact that if it doesn't work with this person, then it's going to suck for them. It's going to be a real problem. And so it's more vulnerable, and they're communicating like, I need you. It wouldn't be appropriate in that scenario to say, I need you. It's not, but there's a subtle communication of it, of like, I want you to be successful in this. That's why I'm here. And then if they move into a we communication, then it's okay, so now great. I can see we're really on the same page. And now it's including their manager instead of it pushing the manager away and saying, we're all coming at you. So these little differences make the subtle changes make a big difference, and in helping somebody's defenses open up a little more so that they can really be present with you while you're sharing. And so I hope I'm making the point about authority here is it was actually costing him a great deal. If we look at it over the course of several years, their refusal to own their own authority in interactions with managers cost over millions of dollars to the company and is not empowering the managers in an effective way. And so taking risks and claiming one's authority in an appropriate way, in a mutual way, is incredibly powerful. It makes the boundaries clearer, helps people understand where they're at. And so, that can, oh, great. Sorry, I totally went on this. And I didn't even look in the chat. Thank you for this question. Let me take a look at it. Oh, shoot. I just closed it. No, take the participants away. Okay. So as a young manager, still early in my leadership journey, I sometimes feel hesitant to speak up with senior leaders because I don't want to come across as pushy or overstepping. How can I manage up with confidence and influence outcomes while still showing respect for their authority? Oh, thank you. This is such a good question. We are going to dive in deeply to this question. So the first thing that sometimes I feel hesitant. So let's break that down a little bit. We're getting into the basics of communication, the basics of emotional intelligence. I tell people that learning to be more present with feelings is the practice that you are doing for the rest of your life. Just like in Kung Fu or whatever martial arts, like you are continuing to practice that punch or kick. And when you stop practicing, you will notice, those close to you will notice, and then everybody else will notice. And you will lose the gains that you have developed. You might be able to get back on track more quickly. But anyway, say all that to say, okay, feel hesitant. Notice hesitant is not a feeling. That's an action. You are hesitating. So right there, you're already dismissing what you're actually feeling. So feel hesitant. I suspect that you're feeling afraid, and maybe fear is kind of a bigger word than you want to recognize right away. So feeling anxiety or feeling concern. I'll go with those. So feeling anxiety about speaking up because you don't want to come across as pushy or overstepping. Now, this is so beautiful because right there, you're already highlighting limiting beliefs that you have about, if you come across as pushy. So there's probably a limiting belief in there that's something like I'm too much. If I'm too much, then I get rejected and people don't want to deal with me. Okay, so now we've got feeling anxious and a limiting belief of I'm too much. So how do I manage up with confidence and influence outcomes while showing respect for their authority? So that's a great question. I want to throw out the confidence. Okay, maybe not throw. I won't throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak. But one thing that you do for confidence is practice. So I want you to literally practice how you're going to talk in meetings. We've all got freaking phones that are easy to record. It's so easy these days to just record myself talking before a meeting and then play it back for myself and get the data of how that comes across. Right there, that will develop confidence. It's uncomfortable. But that's the thing about the point I want to make about confidence is that you're not confident until you've done it. And if you haven't done it, then you have no business being confident. Like if somebody's, running a marathon or, swimming in the Olympics, like confident, like saying, I'm confident I'm going to win. That doesn't necessarily do anything for anybody. No, in that space, you should feel afraid. You should feel angry and have that anger like focus on an outcome, like, oh, I'm gonna beat the, and you should be afraid of feeling the hurt of loss. That's how you become confident. But you have to be willing to be with the feelings. So let's run through this question again. As a young manager, still early in my leadership journey, I sometimes feel afraid or feel anxious about speaking up to senior leaders because I don't want to come across as pushy or overstepping. So how can I manage up with confidence and influence outcomes while still showing respect for their authority? All right, I'm going to throw some ideas out there for you. One thing would be to acknowledge it, of saying, I want to make sure that everybody understands that I'm grateful for all the work that you have all done, because otherwise I wouldn't even be in this position. Some of the things that I'm seeing, I have some questions about. Might just be my ignorance. And so here's some of the things I think might be problems, but I wanted to check it out with all of you. See that right there? You're owning your authority. You're in your circumstance, you're newer to the company, you're younger, and you're owning it. That's your authority position. And there's value in that position. Otherwise they wouldn't be hiring. They wouldn't need somebody in that spot. So you have value right where you're at and owning it, and then communicating, acknowledging the anxiety that you have of, I don't want to come off as seeming like I don't respect what everybody's put into this business. You know, it might just be my ignorance. That's great. Claim your ignorance. So often we're trained that we need to be smart, and I have to show how smart I am. Dear God, this is still an issue for me in coaching. So I can only assume for you that there's ways that you are trying to sound smart that you don't really need to worry about. So own it. You might take on an assignment of watching some Columbo, a show from the 70s. And the brilliant thing about Columbo is he would always go in and just act really ignorant and be like, I don't understand. Help me understand what happened here. He's a detective. And then people would like end up explaining like how they committed the murder or whatever. So owning what you don't understand is incredibly powerful. From a flip side, this might be helpful too. I'll throw this out there. When I was hiring people for an AV department, one of the things I said was, look, I've created all these systems here, and I know that a lot of the things I've done can be done better. So part of your job while you're here, before you become enculturated and start working with things that slow us all down and are ongoing problems, instead of dealing with my workarounds and lack of understanding about new technology, part of your job is to tell me the things that I've set up that are stupid. I want you to tell me where I'm wrong. And so we're going to meet every week, and I want you to come into the meeting saying, George, what you set up here and what you set up over here is just not good. But, you know, so I had that purpose and I communicated it clearly, and that was the expectation to my team. Not everybody's going to say that. You know, if you're in a company, people may not say that, but it might be helpful to hear that there's a lot of value to a new person coming in with fresh eyes and being ignorant of stuff, not understanding why people are doing things the way they are, and asking questions about it. And you will probably get pushback. You will probably, if you ask a question and somebody had a workaround for something, they set up a system and it's like, why are we doing it that way? Like, help me understand what the purpose of that is. Whoever set that up is probably going to be threatened by that question. And, you may have to continue to ask some questions that bring more attention to it. And you develop a relationship with that person so that they understand more that you're working together. Let me know if the things that I've shared there are helpful. I got another point I might throw in a little bit, but I'm seeing something here. So some thoughts we've got coming in are, how are these leaders wired to receive information? Is your delivery tailored to that? Great. Yeah, that's a great point. A great thing to hold as you are interacting, as you're managing up. So if you can recognize the senior leaders and see what their personality style is, that will help you communicate more effectively with them. So if they are results focused, it may serve you to say, I'm seeing that we're getting these results. I imagine that we might need to try this, this, and this to get different results. What do you think? So totally. And if they are more analytical, if that's their leadership style and they want to, then make sure that you go in, that you have all the data to back up what you're proposing. You don't have to, if you're in a meeting, you don't, that's a big mistake a lot of people will make, is they will get too in the weeds too quickly. You want to get good at bottom lining the top points of your information of, all right, I was hired for this. Right now, the company is performing this way. It's my understanding that my job is to help shift these three things. Here's the plan that we have for that right now, and here's how we're tracking our progress. You want to deliver high level like that. Then, if the analytical types leaders then are like, well, hold on. Well, how do we know that you're tracking? And then when they start asking questions, then you can be prepared to show what you have to back that up. But too often people lead with that, and it's basically from a place of insecurity. It's saying like, see, I have all the proof. See, I have all the proof. See. Like, here, look at the data. Look at the data. And if you're talking to an energizer or a regulator type, it's just going to piss them off. It's like, oh, I don't want to know. I hired you to do that kind of work. I don't want to get in the weeds that way. So then we've got some thoughts. Oh, Jerry, feel free to come off mute if you want and share what you're sharing here.
Yeah, it's everything you've been talking about, George, right? It's know your audience, know how your audience is it needs to receive that information. To your point, some leaders want to know how the sausage is made, and other leaders, if you try to talk about how the sausage is made, you're going to lose them. Some are obviously super focused on metrics and KPIs, right? Don't even bother talking or suggesting things if you don't have data, metrics, whatever to support all of that. And anyway, it's just my thoughts on some specific bullet points that I think have been that have been everything you've touched on in this session so far.
Great, Jerry. Thank you. Thanks for throwing those into the chat. I appreciate it. And that, and then to focus into those points that you put in there. Each time that I'm going to be more effective in my communication skills, it's helpful for me to assume that I'm going to be uncomfortable. And so for me, I can tell you right now that the 3 points you put in here, this last one was, are you prepared for follow-up questions? So that would be a spot where I would tend not to be prepared. And so it would be helpful for me then to pay attention to that fear and say, okay, yeah. See, I might even just be unconscious to that point going into a meeting. And so now I want to pay attention to that anxiety and say, okay, I'm going to do the uncomfortable work of being prepared for follow-up questions. I'm going to, so it's not about the confidence. It's about paying attention to where I'm not confident and understanding that I might even then share whatever the data was that I had for the follow-up questions. And I may even have to lean into my discomfort more and say, this is a big one for me personally, because I am not an analyzer type. I score super low on that. And so there's all kinds of questions that people have that I've never thought of, that I'm not going to think of. And so then for me to say, you know what, here's the responses that I've had prepared. You bring in some really good questions, and we're going to go look at those questions and get that back to you. And, you know, what kind of time frame do you want to receive that? How do you want to receive the what we discover? And depending on the kind of meeting you're in, if that's a habit for the analyzer type in there to slow things down, and somebody else in the meeting may not want it to be slowed down and might just say, no, we need to move forward. We can't get bogged down in this stuff. Then it gives the other person an opportunity to say, that's fine if you're going to do that research, but I do not want it to slow down the forward movement that you're already going on. So it is not a top priority. And so you can get that kind of clarity around it, but it's good to verbalize it. It's good to say what you don't know, to say, those are some great questions. We're going to look at it, and here's how I imagine we're going to look at it. And here's the time frame that I have in mind. What do you have in mind? So that's just an example of how to pay attention to the anxieties that you've got around these 3 points that Jerry put in here. Jerry, I see you've got your hand raised.
Yeah. Last thing to add, George, I think another good point you're touching on here, right? And the difference is new leadership, new learnings versus more senior, right? And to your point on that bullet point, right? Are you prepared for follow-up questions? Well, I was not always prepared for follow-up questions. That's rip the Band-Aid off. Get uncomfortable, ask the things. You don't know what you don't know, right? And the things that you're going to learn are going to develop and build you, which is why that bullet point is there on my thoughts, because, well, I've learned it the hard way. Got
it. Jerry, thanks for sharing that. And I'm looking at time, and I have a session coming up, so I'm going to start wrapping up. But I really appreciate the questions and the engagement, because this time has flown by for me. I love this topic. I love people developing and learning new things about themselves and having more agency in their life. So I want to close out with another thing, and I hope that you're still listening in, the person who put in this question, because there's a even more basic thing that I didn't address. And that is, especially when you're younger coming in and you're managing and communicating with people who've been around longer, is one-on-ones, is getting to know people. And if you're not in a culture where you can go grab lunch with people one-on-one or go grab coffees with them, then you're going to have to be even more purposeful with it. A quick story, a VP I was working with was having a hard time he was hired into a spot, and everybody was set in their ways. And he was hired to change patterns in the organization. And he was working at it, and he could be as logical as possible. He could say, and basically the company was also in a spot where they were not going to fire anybody. But they wanted to improve. So it was a real challenge for him, because he's saying, look, we need to change these things to get better results. It's not, I've had a hugely successful career so far, and I understand that with the changes that we need to make. And he wasn't getting anywhere with it. Sometimes the changes would be implemented for a couple of weeks, but they didn't last. So what he did that worked was he just started asking people about themselves. He just started in little 5-minute conversations here and there, because it was not a spot where they're going to go out for coffee or anything like that. It was not that kind of environment. But they would, if they were working on fixing an issue with a machine, he would take the opportunity to say, like, notice something about them, say like, oh, you've got this shirt on with a picture. Is that your dog's? Oh, whoa. Okay. And just got to know everybody personally. And lo and behold, everybody in the company starts shifting and following the procedures that he had been trying to train them on. And the point of this is that when you are a younger leader, you, in a lot of ways, are a threat. You're bringing in something new, and you don't have the wisdom that the people already there have. And you might be right logically about new procedures. That's true, but you didn't create the system that's already functioning. And in order for the people who did create the system that's functioning to shift their behaviors, they're going to have to see you as a human being. They're going to have to feel seen by you. And it's relational, and it is personal. People say, don't take stuff personally. I mean, there's value in that phrase. Not going to throw the whole thing out. But leadership is personal. Managing is personal. It is a relationship. And so one of the best things you can do is get in one-to-ones in whatever way you can. Even again, if it's a 5-minute personal conversation with somebody, it will go a long, long way in how they're hearing you. So with that, I got to close. I got to jump into my next meeting, but I really appreciate everybody joining in here today. Great. Yeah. Thanks so much, Jerry. And I will be back. I'm here almost every Wednesday. Again, you're welcome to set up a one-to-one with me, and welcome to look at my website and use the resources there. And, feel free to throw in more questions. If you've got questions that come up throughout the week, I encourage you to come back here with those questions and let's play around with them. Again, I do interview coaching and even resume coaching. Resumes, so often people they don't know how to show that they get results. They'll just list off things they handle as opposed to putting in the challenging work of seeing how what they did impacted the organization. So that's another thing I like playing with people on is really getting a sense of who they are, what their gifts are, and how that shows up in a resume. Anyway, I got to jump. All right. Blessings, everybody. Take care. I will see you next week.